Welkom bij het 8 uur journaal. We hebben vanavond een speciale uitzending, namelijk een van mijn danspartners waar ik de wereld normaal mee afreisde. Die woont tegenwoordig in Engeland. En ik bedacht, kerst is een mooi tijdstip om eens even polshoogte te nemen met hoe het met haar gaat. Hi Kristine.
Hi Willem.
Good to see you. Unfortunately, we haven't danced for a while.
I know, it's been over a year.
Exactly. Last year, I visited you in Scotland. At the moment, you're not in Scotland anymore.
I'm not. I'm now living in London.
Okay, so for the people who have never met you or have not danced with you yet, who is Kristine and how did you get in the British Isles?
Goodness. Well, Kristine is a dancer, and I started dancing, solo dancing from a very young age. And then I got into partner dancing. And partner dancing was a hobby for me until I ended up being asked to teach salsa and bachata, which I did for a few years before I found Zouk. And then I met you, Willem, and I guess I won't say the rest is history because people don't necessarily know what that history is. I traveled to Europe a few times. I saw Willem there. I brought Zouk back to Seattle and started teaching classes there. I grew a really large community of multiple levels, dance teams, dance academy, and also produced events there, namely Seattle Dance Festival at the Center of the Universe, which some people label as Seattle Zouk Festival, though I never called it that because I always had multiple dance genres at the event.
So for the people who are now confused, you grew up in Seattle, you have a Canadian passport, you have a US passport, and you have a Latvian passport. Please explain a little bit about your nationalities.
Yeah, so both my parents are foreigners. My father is Latvian and my mother is Canadian. So as descendants of these two people, I'm entitled to their nationalities. But I was born in the United States. So as someone born in the United States, I was entitled to US citizenship. So I am a carrier of 3 citizenships.
That's very convenient. Yet you chose not to live in Latvia or Canada or the US. Right now you're living in the UK. How come?
Correct. After I'd received my Latvian passport, I did a little bit of a tour around Europe to see where I felt I fit and where life would blossom for me. And the place that spoke to me the most was Scotland. I had the highest concentration of friends and people who wanted and needed me to be part of the community and to build something and to be someone that could actually make things happen as opposed to someone that's just competing with other people.
So you found your niche. Now you moved to London. How is life in the UK? Because it's seceded from the European Union.
That has its challenges for sure, but luckily I was able to get my pre-settled status before Brexit happened, so I'm also okay to stay here. In a few more years, I'll be able to apply for indefinite right to remain. So that works out well for me. I really enjoyed life in Scotland. It's a really beautiful place. There's a lot of really amazing, warm people there that, Scottish people are great as it is, but I think it's also just how the city is set up, that it's so small and livable. You can walk and cycle everywhere, and that makes people more willing to spend that time with you because there's not that hustle and bustle. And there's nature everywhere. So I think that makes people happier too. It definitely makes me happier to be able to go to the ocean at any time. But I made the decision to come to London because of the pandemic, which sounds strange because a lot of people said, oh, everyone's leaving London because of the pandemic. But I chose to come back to school because being a full-time dance teacher at a time where holding hands is essentially illegal, I needed to find something else to do with myself. So I'm now studying dance movement psychotherapy at the University of Roehampton.
Nice. So getting into dance therapy, that was also one of the directions my school was taking. Well, you said something interesting. Holding hands makes you a villain, or hugging makes you a criminal. How are the restrictions in the UK?
It's definitely different in Scotland than it is in England. I actually find it's more oppressive in Scotland because there is still, as soon as you go in a building, you need to wear a mask. And there was more restrictions around how many people could meet and in what way they could meet. When I was teaching classes up there, it was limited to 10 people because otherwise it was deemed unsafe.
And I think you have a very hard-lining Prime Minister, Sturgeon, I believe.
Yeah, definitely. And then I noticed the difference immediately when I moved to England because I stopped along the way to have dinner. And as soon as I went into an establishment, no one was wearing masks except for the people working there. And I thought, wow, masks off. This is crazy. I mean, not that I was against it, but it just felt so different. And it definitely has a major divide here in London where there's people who are very for the rules and shaming towards people that are riding public transport without wearing masks, which there's definitely a lot of people riding public transport that aren't wearing masks. And no one seems to be cracking down on that, even though there's technically a £200 fine if you do.
So you see a fatigue also happening with the UK police. They don't feel that it's their job anymore to try to uphold the mandates or the restrictions.
The only time I had someone upholding a mandate was when I went to the theater. You were not allowed to go into the theater unless you wore a mask, though they said you can remove it when you're seated. And you can remove it if you're at the bar having a drink or whatever. So that was one case. And then another case was when I went into this very crowded department store called Harrods, and there was a security guard at the front saying that you couldn't come in unless you had a mask.
Okay, and are there still rules about no contact or safe distance? I believe it was 2 meters in the UK.
Yeah, I think it was 2 meters in the UK. I haven't heard that so much. The main restriction right now is if you can work from home, work from home. And if you're in public transport to wear a mask. I don't think that there's full restrictions on shops, but I also don't go to a lot of shops myself.
Yeah, so this is what we also see in the numbers in Holland, that society is more or less segregated into a divide between people who want to follow the mandates and took the shot, and the people who think it is all unnecessary, do not want to test, do not want to wear a face mask, and do not want to inject. Do you see that same thing happening in the UK?
I think that there is that. I definitely knew more people in Scotland that were against the mandates than I do here in England. And I'm not sure why that is, that I've just come in contact with more people that were like-minded in Scotland versus in England. But I think also some of that has to do with the fact that in my university, it is mandated. And you cannot be in the classroom, you cannot be in the building unless you're wearing a face covering, and you will be reminded. So it kind of eliminates that ability to find people that might be against it because it's so intense. And most of the people that I've been in contact with here in the UK have been through university, or in the UK, in England.
Clear. So what is the policy? Do you have to test for everything? Can you travel by plane? Do you need to be injected? What are the rules in England?
So I know that if I was traveling outside of the UK right now, I have to have a compelling reason to do so. And then they have different rules depending on if you're vaccinated or not. And I'm not entirely sure how that plays out traveling within the UK. Like because I am going to be flying from London to Scotland in January, and I'm not 100% sure what I need to do for that. I think that it's just a lateral flow test is acceptable in order to do that. In a lot of places, events like dance events are you must bring a negative lateral flow test in order to attend the event. Not all places are like that, but I would say half or most.
Mm-hmm. So your family is still in the US, in Seattle. It's Christmas time. Why haven't you taken a flight and celebrated Christmas with your family?
Well, the main reason is that the restrictions are just too much for me to be able to go. I would need to take a test, which of course there's a 50-50 chance that would be negative or positive. So far, all my tests have been negative that I've taken for any reason, but you never know. And anyway, let's just say that was negative, and then I get on a flight and I get to Seattle. Upon getting there, I would need to isolate for 7 days as a non-vaccinated person, which I can really only go to the US for 7 to 10 days before I need to return because I have things that I need to do for school here in the UK. And so I would be on isolation the entire time that I'm there, which I would just go to see my family and isolate there, and that's it. But when I come back, then I have to isolate for 10 days because I'm not vaccinated, and I have to pay upwards of 200 pounds on tests to prove that I'm negative at that point. And if at any point in this there was a positive test, then I would face a further isolation. And if I did face any further isolation, I would miss school and I would miss time on my clinical placement. And that's non-negotiable for me.
Clear. You also have a very specific reason why you don't want to get the jab, apart from it not being effective, it not working, it being potentially dangerous as it is still experimental. You told me about your brother, if it's okay for you to talk about it. So what happened to your brother?
So when my brother was 2 years old, he was a functioning social human being, and then he received his MMR vaccine, and he started to regress to a point that now he presents with autism, and he has lost motor functioning. So his fine motor is really bad, such that forming words is difficult for him. Overstimulus is difficult for him, and it's an incredibly isolating experience for him and for the family as well.
Yeah, it's. I can imagine it's very difficult to have a person in your family that needs actually constant attention because he's not able to take care of himself. How sure are you that it was caused by the vaccine?
I would say 100% sure. Just because I know that before the vaccine, he didn't have these symptoms. So if you're fine and then you do something and then you're not fine, it seems like that's what caused it. Another thing that makes that seem highly probable is in doing heavy metal detoxing, he has lessened said behaviors. So that also points to this poisoning.
Was it ever accepted or acknowledged by a medical professional that this could have been the cause?
Yes, but ones that do not have insurance. Because if you claim this, then you're not insured.
Wow, so that is really a stimulus not to claim it.
Yeah, so if you are going somewhere that all of your health care is provided for, then the doctor would say, no, this happens sometimes. Sometimes it takes a long time to diagnose, or it doesn't show up until this age. Whereas you go to a naturopathic doctor and people that specialize in autism that are not insured, and they will tell you, no, this is exactly what's happening. And this is happening on a broad spectrum with different things, whether it's autoimmune disorders or other things on the autism spectrum disorder, but just a whole suite of issues are caused by this.
Clear. So you also have a personal reason not to take the jab. But what we're seeing now is that there is a huge push in order to get every person on the planet to take basically a gene therapy injection. How are you holding out? And is it for you never, ever?
At the moment, I'm still a never, ever. I don't agree with it. I don't want to offer my body in this way. I don't know what would happen, whether it's immediately what would happen or what would happen 5 years, 10 years down the road. I am not interested in offering my body up for potential malfunctions because of the vaccine.
Clear. So I feel that if we keep resisting this horrible mandate nightmare, that there will be light at the end of the tunnel. Now, Boris Johnson is trying to push, and with him, his other lackeys and goons, they're trying to push the green certificate as well. In Holland and in Belgium, we are already subjected to it. So it's difficult to participate in daily life if you do not have the QR code. How is that in the UK?
How it is right now, you could have a negative test, and that serves just as well as having a card that proves that you're vaccinated. So it's not really that it's not as bad.
Yeah. So you're not obliged to have a QR code and an app on your phone to get in.
A QR code could be just from having a negative test. So say you did a lateral flow test and then you submit that test, then you would have a QR code. So yes, that would have a QR code, but it wouldn't be linked to a vaccination necessarily.
Clear. Okay. Thanks for informing us about the UK and about your life. Do you have any specific wishes for the people in Holland or around the world, being Christmas time and following up with the New Year?
Yeah, definitely. I want people to be embodied. I want them to be in relationship to their body and to other human beings, and to not force things on other human beings, because the more you force someone to do something that is not in their body, the more they will reject that. So I just want people to be compassionate.
Thank you very much. And I hope that we can dance soon again, physically, not through any digital means. Stick in there and have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
You too, Willem.